Hey everybody, this is Doug Mark. Welcome back to 5 Franchising Questions. My guest today is Karen Booz. She's the Director of Business Development with Answer Connect. She's also a mom of humans and dogs. She's a franchise fanatic. She's won the Stevie Toastmaster Awards, a Sewing 4-H award that I just found out about, and maybe most importantly, probably the best connector I've ever met in my life. Karen, welcome back to 5 Franchising Questions.
I am so excited to be here. The first time I did this, we were one of the first podcasts I ever did. Now we're like serious friends. So I'm excited today.
For our audience's sake, can you tell them about Answer Connect and how Answer Connect supports the franchising community, please?
Answer Connect is a live 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year answering service. Our agents are in the US, the UK, and Canada. And what we want to do is build scripts to ask the questions that our franchise community needs to get information on. And I say the call to action should always be setting an appointment. Get yourself or your sales team in front of that person. So we do this for FranDev, so the sales franchising. We do this for franchisees. This is really huge for them because they could potentially lose $1.5 million a year by missing 30% of their calls. If they're not getting that many calls, it's very important. And on the franchisor side, on the FranDev, have somebody screen your calls. Be in front of people that you can build the relationship and grow the business and help them attain their lifelong dream of being a business owner.
I didn't think of it from the FranDev side, right? I've always thought of it from the franchisee side of things, but I feel like it's just as important that you answer the phone on the first call. You know, if somebody's interested in buying into your franchise system, and you miss that first call, I feel like there's probably some statistics out there that talk about, how often you miss out on actually signing business from that first call, which is actually where I go to here with my second question. Circling back to what we were just talking about with the, FranDev side of things and answering the phone and how important that is, there's a statistic about how many people buy from the first company that they speak with. So why is it important, from a sales perspective, to staff your phones with a live person?
The statistic is about 80% of the people who call into a business now, today, buy with that first person that they reach. That unfortunately does not mean the first person that they call. In many cases, they're not picking up the phone. And because we have so many tools with the internet now, people have already looked at your reviews. They've read the worst reviews and they've actually decided, hey, I can live with this. I'm going to go with this company. So 80% of the people who are reaching out and get somebody will buy with them. They'll just stop. Game over.
Today's buyers are different than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. They like to go on their own, buyer's journey, right? Where they're checking out your website. They're obviously reading reviews like you just mentioned. And so you're right. Like, it's almost like by the time they make that call, they've almost predetermined that if this call goes well, this is going to be who I go with. So all they're looking for is for you to kind of shine in that one moment that you get. And if you miss that moment, does that mean that they go to the next person on their list that also met the criteria? So, wow, fascinating statistic. Question number 3 here. I hope this is kind of a fun one and one that you get to think about just for a second, but what is something that used to be really scary for you, but you faced your fear and now you do it with relative ease, either in a business perspective or a personal perspective?
No doubt in my mind, speaking in public and walking up to business people that I don't know. I can talk to anybody at the grocery store, but that has no impact on me.
Right.
It's walking up to people that have an impact in my life, and how will I represent and how will I show up for them, and then talking to them. It was terrifying. And speaking in public, it overwhelming. I can talk to anybody in any room, but all of a sudden, if there's an audience of more than 4, panic. I still have the nerves. I don't know that they'll ever go away. I've talked to some professional speakers and they say that, the nerves always kind of get them excited.
I'm right there with you. And it's interesting too, because there's what you're going through and then there's the outside perspective, right? And the outside perspective, I would look at you and say, oh my gosh, master connector, like we'll talk to absolutely anyone. And you are that way and you are outgoing. But what I never realized was, you had to force yourself to get comfortable doing that. And that's a massive testament to your determination to kind of figure that out and know that in order for you to really be successful, you had to kind of conquer that fear and master that fear and get over it, because on the outside looking in, you look really comfortable out there. So kudos to you. And yeah, I'm with you, right? Like social anxiety type things are the things that really are tough for me. I have a fear of flying and I do it all the time. Now that's a whole different story because I medicate. And so I've mastered the whole, I'm going to medicate before this flight. It's not going to matter. So I don't get any anxiety before I fly, but I used to be riddled with it before every flight. And somebody who's on the road a lot, not as much as you, but still on the road a lot, it would be debilitating if I couldn't, get through that. And so I found a way. I had to go see a doctor and talk to him about what was going on. And I talked to my therapist about these things. And I've got a plan now. And when you have a plan, it kind of makes it all go a little bit smoother, I feel like. Question number 4 is, there's a quote out there that says every distraction takes 23 minutes to rebound from. Can you speak to that and kind of remind our audience, does Answer Connect help with that kind of thing?
100% we do. And that's a great question. There's actually a study that says when you're working, right? You're working, you pick up the phone, you start talking to them, all of a sudden you've left what you're doing. Even if that conversation is 5 minutes, you've stopped what you're doing, you're into another project, which is interesting because you can't multitask it. Our brain is not set up. We can switch quickly, but we can't multitask. We can't do 2 things at once. So we're working on a project, we're talking to somebody. That person may ask us to do something for them, which we of course want to accommodate. And now you're off on a different rabbit hole or a different track. And then for you to rewind and get back to what you're doing and sit down and remember to fully engage in that moment, on average takes 23 minutes. Now, what you should do is you should set up times that you're going to make calls. You should set up times that you're going to respond to emails. You should set up time that is completely focused on the project, and nothing should be allowed to interrupt it. Because if you do, it's like walking through a door jam. You could forget what you left the room for.
I live that every day. I often say like I'm a squirrel, and if something kind of shiny comes along, like I'm going to notice that and I'm going to get distracted. And so the time blocking thing I love. I think I read about time blocking I think the first business book I ever read about that was, I think it was called The 4-Hour Workweek. It's an interesting read, and I think there is some tenets of it that are great, and I by no means can implement the 4-Hour Workweek myself. But there are some things that, help me save time and help me stay focused, and we're going to talk kind of more about some of those things that help with that in the future. So yeah, that's a wild statistic about how long it takes you to get back focused again. And that means that, if you have a day with 10 different distractions, that's 230 minutes, right, that you're missing out on, and before you know it, there's very little precious time to actually do the work. And so kind of cutting out those distractions, making, like you said, time blocking. I like time blocking because I know I don't have to answer anything else. I can shut my email off and make calls, and I live out of my CRM at that point. Or the opposite. Here I'm just going to be answering phones or doing callbacks. And big fan of the time blocking myself. I think it's one thing that helps me accomplish some things throughout the day. Love it. I'm going to switch to a different question here, and it's, you're going to have to be okay taking a little bit of praise. So I personally feel like you're one of the biggest influencers in franchising. I think you're the most amazing connector in franchising that I have personally met. But you worked really hard to get to this point, right? You're putting in tireless hours. You're flying tens of thousands of miles. You're living out of a hotel. Do you have any sort of tips, tricks, advice for someone getting into franchising? Was it, becoming a connector, or was it something else?
First of all, thank you. I don't always see that, and I have a lot of imposter syndrome in that area, so I appreciate those kind words. I was recently talking to somebody, and I told them, I wish I would have known about franchising in my 20s. I wish I would have, right? 35 years ago, if I had been in it for this long, my life would be exponentially better and different. And I think the thing that's so powerful, at least for me, at the events that I go to, is people seem to be so interested, so caring, so willing to give of their time. And for me, it was three gentlemen. Hugh Jones, who was one of the first people I ever spoke to. He was with Mosquito Squad. He would go on hikes. He would talk to me about franchising and about, exponential return on investment. And then I listened to a podcast, Jack Monson's podcast. I reached out to him. He picked up the phone. He started introducing me to people. Like now on this side of it, 6 years later, Jack Monson introduced me to people. And I think what is really powerful is if you want to delve into the franchising community, one, you have to be willing to show up. And I don't mean send different people to the same event over and over, because the people in the franchising world want to know that you have skin in the game, because guess what? Their life is in that game, right? They have taken everything in their life and put it into this place. So you have to be committed and you have to show up. And I don't know how you feel about this comment, but I feel that 90+% of my interaction with franchising is building a relationship. Less than 3 of it is transactional. And the reason it is because we've built a relationship. You and I have built a relationship over the years that is much different than the first time we had this conversation.
Yes.
And we talk, we have a personal connection. I know your family. I know your beautiful wife. I know what you do. And it's building on a connection, then it is building on how we can help you grow your business. But people don't like to be sold to, and they don't like to buy. What they want to know is that they can trust somebody.
I really love what you said about you can't just send somebody different to every conference, every trade show. And that is 100% correct. And it's because you have to, like you said, you build up a relationship and you build up trust. But seeing your face at these events is really, really important. And I've started to realize this to the point where I'm trying to figure out, how do I get to more events? Because I have these wonderful relationships. You're a perfect example of that. And just other businesses too that I partner with, and we have this sense of trust. And every time I go to this event, that trust and that relationship grows and expands and expands. And so sending somebody different every single time doesn't allow somebody the period of growth where they need to put in the time and be seen at the events, and not even just go to them, right? They have to engage at those events too, which is what you spoke to earlier, which is you're going to have to, networking is important, and showing up and being present is the key part. There's lots of people who show up and are not present, and I'll probably never know them in the franchising space. I hope it's not because they're introverts and I can't connect with them, because if you're an introvert, come talk to me at any conference, please. Chances are I'm just as introverted as you are. So please, please, please come talk to me. But that's awesome, Karen. And I feel exactly the same way. How wonderful is that?
I agree with you 100%. I think that some of the people that I have met, you included, Cassie, are friends that I will know for a lifetime. No matter where I go, if I'm in the area, guess what? I'm going to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm here. Can we go to dinner? Can we do something? I would hope the same would happen in my area. But these are people that I've made true relationships, true friends with. And I think that is highly unusual. Coming from the industries that I have come from, mostly logistics, everything is transactional.